It started as an ordinary day until it wasn't. Keanu Reeves was enjoying a quiet meal at McDonald's when a 5-year-old boy suddenly whispered something in his ear. Within seconds, Keanu's face turned pale, his hands trembled, and he immediately called 911. The entire restaurant fell silent. What could a child possibly say to leave the Hollywood star so shaken? Was it a chilling secret? A desperate warning? Or something even more unbelievable? One thing's for sure, this moment changed everything. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles, the kind where the sun bathed the city in golden light, casting long shadows on the pavement. Keanu Reeves, known for his humility and quiet presence, had just spent the day at a charity event, surrounded by psalmists more than just a movie star. He had given them his time, his energy, and a part of his heart. But after hours of laughter and deep conversations, he craved a moment of solitude. Instead of heading home or to an upscale restaurant, he pulled into a McDonald's off a busy avenue. There was something comforting about the simplicity of a fast food meal, something grounding in a life that often felt surreal. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with life. Families gathered around plastic tables, kids played near the small playground, and the familiar scent of fries filled the air. Keanu, dressed simply in a black t-shirt and jeans, walked in unnoticed. He ordered his meal, found a quiet corner, and allowed himself a rare moment of anonymity. With his phone turned off, he focused on his surroundings, taking in the hum of life around him. But then he noticed something odd. A boy, no older than 5, was sitting at a nearby table staring at him. Messy blonde hair, a slightly oversized blue shirt, and in his hands a broken toy car clutched as if it were the most valuable thing he owned. His eyes, filled with something between curiosity and hesitation, flickered between Keanu and the man sitting next to him. The man was different. He was sharply dressed in a pristine suit, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. He seemed engrossed in his phone, barely acknowledging the boy's existence. Yet, each time the child moved, even slightly, the man's gaze flickered toward him with an unsettling sharpness. Keanu felt a shift in the air. Something about their dynamic felt off. The boy looked restless, as if debating something internally before making a decision that surprised even himself. He slid off his chair, gripping his broken car, and cautiously approached Keanu. The restaurant seemed quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Keanu set his burger down, turning toward the boy, meeting his wide, nervous eyes. The child trembled slightly, his fingers tightening around the toy. Keanu leaned in, offering a reassuring smile. "What's up, buddy?" he asked, his voice warm and steady. The boy hesitated, his small chest rising and falling quickly, then whispered words so faint Keanu had to lean closer. And when he heard them, the warmth drained from his face. His heart pounded. He had expected a simple request, a child's, maybe even a plea for an autograph. But what he heard instead made his blood run cold. Before he could react, the man at the table, Mr. Henry, as Keanu would later come to know, realized the boy was gone. His head snapped up, his eyes locking onto them. Keanu felt the weight of that gaze before even turning. The air thickened. Henry stood slowly, adjusting his suit jacket, and began walking toward them with the measured steps of a man who always got what he wanted. Keanu remained seated but shifted slightly, placing himself between the boy and Henry. He was no stranger to tense situations, but this felt different, more dangerous. Henry approached with a forced smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Sorry about this," he said, voice smooth but empty. "Nathan can be a little too friendly sometimes." Keanu didn't break eye contact. Years in Hollywood had taught him how to read people, and everything about this man set off alarms in his mind. He wasn't just someone irritated by a wandering child. He was someone who wanted control. "He was just showing me his toy," Keanu replied calmly. "Looks like it's been through a lot." Henry extended his hand toward the boy. "Come on, Nathan. Time to go." Nathan took a step back. He didn't say a word, but the small movement spoke volumes. Henry's jaw tightened ever so slightly, his patience wearing thin. Keanu's voice remained steady. "I think he might want to stay a little longer." A flicker of something dark passed through Henry's expression before he forced another tight smile. "I'm afraid we're on a schedule." The restaurant had resumed its usual buzz, but for Keanu, the noise faded into the background. His instincts screamed at him to be careful. He looked down at Nathan, then back at Henry, who was watching him with growing irritation. Before Henry could make another move, Keanu casually reached for his phone under the table. With practiced ease, He sent a quick message to an emergency contact. He didn't know exactly what he was dealing with yet, but he knew one thing. Nathan was afraid, and that was enough for him to act. Henry noticed the movement and stepped closer. "I don't know what you think you're doing," he said, his voice lower now, the polite facade slipping. "But this has gone far enough." Keanu met his stare, calm but firm. "I'm just trying to help a kid who looks like he needs it. I'm sure you can understand that." Nathan, still clutching his toy car, finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to go." For a moment, Henry said nothing. Then without warning, he reached forward, attempting to grab Nathan's arm. But Keanu was faster. He placed a firm but controlled hand on Henry's wrist, stopping him cold. The grip wasn't aggressive, but it was unyielding. The atmosphere inside the McDonald's was thick with tension. Keanu Reeves could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Nathan, the small boy clutching the broken toy car, was hiding behind him, trembling with fear. Across from them, Mr. Henry stood tall, his pristine suit slightly wrinkled from his impatient movements. His cold, piercing gaze flickered between Keanu and Nathan, a thin veneer of patience barely masking his growing irritation. Just then, the door swung open. 2 police officers entered, their eyes scanning the room. Officer James and Officer Vega, the waitress who had been observing everything, subtly pointed in their direction. Keanu exhaled, knowing help had arrived. Henry straightened his suit, forcing a smug smile. "Officers, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "I was just about to leave with my son." Keanu turned to the officers. "I think you should hear what Nathan has to say first." Officer James crouched down, offering Nathan a warm, reassuring smile. "Hey there, buddy. Can you tell us what's going on?" Nathan looked at Keanu, then at James, before finally finding his voice. "He heard my mom," he whispered, "and he said no one would help us." The restaurant went silent. Officer Vega exchanged a look with James before stepping forward. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Henry's face darkened. "This is ridiculous." But as James reached for his handcuffs, Keanu finally allowed himself a breath of relief. Nathan was safe. And soon the truth would come out. Henry let out a slow exhale, his lips curving into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I really appreciate you looking after him, Mr. Reeves," he said smoothly, but there was an undeniable edge to his voice. "But we have somewhere to be. It's time for Nathan to come with me." Keanu remained calm, his stance unwavering. Years of experience in reading people had trained him to recognize danger when he saw it, and Henry was dangerous. "Nathan seems like he has something to say," Keanu replied, his voice light but firm. "I think it's important to listen to kids, don't you?" He turned to Nathan, giving him a reassuring nod. "Take your time, buddy." Nathan hesitated, his little fingers gripping the hem of his faded blue shirt. His wide, fearful eyes darted toward Henry, who took a slow, deliberate step forward. "Come now, Nathan," Henry said, extending his hand. "Let's not waste Mr. Reeves' time." But instead of stepping forward, Nathan shrank back, pressing himself against Keanu's leg. The simple act sent a ripple of anger across Henry's composed features. His smile faltered for a brief second before he let out a forced chuckle. "Children can be so dramatic," he muttered under his breath. "I think this has gone far enough." Henry reached for Nathan, but before he could touch the boy, Keanu smoothly stepped in between them. He placed a steadying hand on Henry's shoulder, his grip light yet firm. "Commitments can wait," Keanu said, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "Nathan seems scared, and I don't think it's a good idea to force him. Let's just take a minute." A flicker of annoyance flashed in Henry's eyes, but before he could respond, the waitress who had been watching from the counter approached with a cautious smile. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, her eyes flickering toward Nathan. Keanu gave her a small nod, his expression remaining neutral. "Everything's fine. Actually, could you bring Nathan a drink? He looks like he could use something." The waitress hesitated for a second before nodding. As she turned to leave, she subtly slipped a folded piece of paper onto the table beside Keanu's tray. He didn't react immediately, waiting until Henry's gaze had shifted momentarily before reaching for it. He unfolded it discreetly and scanned the hastily scribbled words, "Police on their way. Stay calm." A surge of relief coursed through Keanu, but he knew this wasn't over yet. He casually slid the napkin back onto the table and turned his attention back to Nathan. "You're safe now," he whispered, kneeling down so that they were at eye level. "You can tell me what's going on." Nathan's little hands clenched around the toy car, his knuckles turning white. He cast a fearful glance toward Henry, who had returned to his seat, but was watching them with hawk-like precision. Phone still in hand. The boy gulped, his voice barely a whisper. "He did something bad to my mom, can you help?" Keanu felt a chill crawl down his spine. His instincts had been right. This was more than just an overprotective guardian. He placed a reassuring hand on Nathan's shoulder. "I promise," he said firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you." At that moment, Henry stood abruptly, adjusting his suit jacket with slow, deliberate movements. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice laced with thinly veiled frustration. "But Nathan and I really need to be leaving now. Thanks for keeping him entertained." Keanu rose slowly, blocking his path once more. "He's still talking to me about his car," he said with an easy smile. "I think he wants a few more minutes." Henry's jaw tightened, his forced patience beginning to crack. "That's very kind of you, but he's with me. We have an appointment." Keanu didn't move. His tone remained calm, but his stance was resolute. "Kids need time to talk," he said, locking eyes with Henry. "I'm sure you understand that." For a brief moment, Henry's control slipped. His nostrils flared and his fingers twitched as if resisting the urge to clench into fists. But then, as quickly as it had come, his composed mask returned. "Of course," he said smoothly, "but we don't have time to waste." The waitress returned, placing a small cup of apple juice in front of Nathan. As she turned to leave, she quickly muttered under her breath, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That was all the time Keanu had left to stall. He crouched beside Nathan once more, keeping his body positioned between the boy and Henry. "You mentioned your mom," he said gently. "Do you know where she is now?" Nathan hesitated. She's at home," he murmured. "But she can't get up." He heard her. The room seemed to shrink around Keanu. His pulse quickened, but his exterior remained calm. "We're going to help her, I promise," he said. Henry slammed his hand on the table, drawing startled looks from the surrounding diners. "That's enough," he snapped. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Reeves." Keanu stood, his eyes locked onto Henry with a quiet intensity. "If she's hurt, then it's everyone's business." Henry's lips curled into a sneer. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." At that moment, the glass doors of the McDonald's swung open. 2 uniformed police officers strode in, scanning the room. The waitress pointed in their direction. Henry noticed immediately. His entire demeanor shifted, his face drained of color, his body stiffening as he instinctively took a step back. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You don't have any proof of anything." One of the officers, James, approached with a calm but firm expression. "Sir, we received a call regarding a disturbance. Would you mind answering a few questions?" Henry's lips pressed into a thin line. "I have nothing to say. I was just leaving with a child who doesn't want to go with you," Keanu interjected, "and who just told me his mother was hurt." James's expression darkened. He turned to Nathan. "Son, are you okay? Do you feel safe?" Nathan hesitated before clutching Keanu's sleeve. "I don't want to go with him. He hurt my mom." Henry took a step back, his eyes filled with anger, his mask of control slipping for the first time. The tension in the restaurant was thick, every pair of eyes now locked on the confrontation. Keanu could feel Nathan gripping his sleeve tightly, his small fingers digging into the fabric as if he were holding on for dear life. The 2 officers, James and Vega, remained firm, blocking Henry's exit as their hands hovered near their holsters, prepared for anything. "Sir, I suggest you cooperate," James said, his voice calm but edged with authority. "We need to clarify a few things before you leave." Henry let out a sharp exhale, his eyes flicking between Keanu, the officers, and the small boy at Keanu's side. The veins in his neck tensed as he clenched his jaw. "This is a waste of time," he growled. "I have rights. You can't just detain me based on a child's imagination." Keanu remained silent, his sharp gaze never leaving Henry. He had met men like this before, men who thrived on power and manipulation, who controlled others through fear. But fear wouldn't win today. Not if he had anything to do with it. Nathan, sensing the shift in the air, took a deep breath and spoke, his voice trembling but resolute. "He locked my mom in the house. She fell. She's hurt. I think she's still on the floor." His words were met with a collective gasp from those in earshot. The officers exchanged glances, the weight of the revelation sinking in. "That's enough," Henry snapped, his composure breaking as he lunged forward. But Keanu was faster. He instinctively stepped in front of Nathan, pushing the boy behind him as Vega and James seized Henry by the arms. You're safe now, Keanu reassured Nathan, his voice steady. We're going to help your mom. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes, and for the first time since their encounter, his body sagged with relief. Keanu stood up and turned to Officer Vega. We need to get to his house. If his mother is hurt, she might need immediate medical attention. Vega nodded. We'll send a unit ahead, but Nathan, can you show us where you live? Nathan hesitated, his eyes darting to Henry, who was now being led toward the police cruiser outside. The man's cold glare sent a shiver down his spine, but then he felt Keanu's reassuring hand on his back. He looked up at the actor, who gave him a small nod. With a shaky breath, Nathan whispered, I'll show you. The drive to Nathan's home was tense, the silence punctuated only by the sound of sirens in the distance. Nathan clutched his broken toy car, his small hands trembling. Keanu sat beside him in the backseat of a police vehicle, offering quiet comfort. You did the right thing, Nathan. You're very brave. The boy sniffled and nodded, holding the toy tighter. I just want my mom to be okay. As the car pulled up to the modest suburban house, a chilling sight awaited them. The front door was slightly ajar, swaying in the light evening breeze. Vega and James immediately exchanged looks of concern before stepping out, their hands instinctively resting on their holsters. Keanu stayed in the car with Nathan, but his heart pounded against his ribs. Something was wrong. Vega signaled to a paramedic team that had arrived moments earlier. Be ready. James carefully pushed open the door. Inside, the dimly lit living room was in disarray, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and a chilling silence that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. The officers moved cautiously, scanning the room. Then, they found her. A woman lay motionless on the floor near the couch, her head resting against the hardwood. A thin trickle of blood traced a path down her temple. We've got a victim, James called, waving the paramedics in. Nathan, unable to stay back any longer, bolted from the car. Mom, he cried, his tiny legs carrying him toward the house before Keanu caught him, holding him back gently but firmly. Wait, Keanu said. Let them help her first. Nathan sobbed into his chest, and Keanu held him protectively, his heart aching for the boy. Inside, the medics worked quickly. She's got a pulse, but it's weak, one of them reported. She's breathing, but we need to move fast. Moments later, they carried her out on a stretcher, placing an oxygen mask over her pale face. Nathan broke free from Keanu's arms and ran to her side. Mom, wake up. The woman's eyelids fluttered, a weak groan escaping her lips. Nathan, she murmured, her hand twitching toward him. Relief swept through the crowd. She was alive. Keanu knelt beside Nathan. She's going to be okay, buddy. She's safe now. Nathan nodded, wiping his tear-streaked face with the back of his hand. For the first time, a small smile broke through his fear. Henry, now detained in the back of a police cruiser, seethed as he watched from a distance. He had lost. The truth had come out. He was no longer in control. Keanu turned to James. Make sure he never comes near them again. James gave a firm nod. We'll see to it. As the ambulance doors closed, Nathan turned to Keanu and asked, will you come with us? Keanu smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. I'll be right behind you. As the ambulance drove off Keanu Street, watching until the flashing lights disappeared into the night. A heavy but satisfied sigh left his lips. Tonight, he hadn't just played the role of a hero on screen. He had been one in real life. And that was all that mattered. The flashing lights of the police cars bathed the darkened street in red and blue hues, as Keanu Reeves held Nathan close to his side. The boy's grip on his broken toy car was tight, his small hands trembling. Keanu could feel the fear radiating from him, but there was also a hint of relief. The nightmare wasn't over yet, but at least for the first time, Nathan wasn't alone. Officer James and Officer Vega stood by the squad car where Henry was now restrained. His face, once composed and arrogant, was twisted in fury. He muttered under his breath, his eyes never leaving Keanu and Nathan. Keanu knew that men like Henry didn't give up easily. There was always another scheme, another lie, another way to manipulate the system. But this time, Keanu wasn't going to let him win. Let's get to Nathan's house, Keanu said firmly, looking at James. His mother needs help. James nodded, signaling his partner, we'll escort you there. Stay close. As the car drove through the quiet streets, Nathan's fingers clenched around Keanu's hand. "Do you think she's okay?" he asked in a whisper, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. Keanu turned to him with a reassuring smile. "She's strong, Nathan. Just like you. We'll find her, and she'll be safe." The air grew heavier as they approached Nathan's home. The street was eerily silent, the windows dark. The moment the car stopped, Officer Vega noticed something alarming. The front door was slightly ajar. A chill ran down Keanu's spine. He knew that was never a good sign. "Stay here," James ordered, drawing his weapon. Keanu kept Nathan close, placing a protective arm around his shoulders. The officers stepped cautiously through the open doorway, the hinges creaking ominously. The living room was in complete disarray. Furniture overturned, shards of broken glass littered the floor, and the unmistakable signs of a struggle were evident. Then, in the dim glow of a flickering lamp, they saw her. Megan lay unconscious on the floor, her breathing shallow, a small wound visible on her forehead. A wave of relief swept through Keanu. She was alive. "Call the paramedics," Vega said urgently into her radio. James knelt beside Megan, checking for any additional injuries. Nathan broke free from Keanu's hold and rushed to his mother's side. "Mom," he cried, shaking her gently. "Wake up, please." Megan stirred, her eyelids fluttering weakly. When she saw Nathan, tears welled in her eyes. "Nathan, you're safe," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Keanu knelt beside them. "She's going to be okay, buddy." As the paramedics arrived, the officers searched the house. In Henry's belongings, they found a notebook filled with chilling details, dates, surveillance notes, and a plan to take Nathan out of state. It was clear now Henry had been planning this for a long time. Outside, Henry, still in the squad car, was watching the scene unfold with a dark, menacing glare. His time was up. He was being taken away, but Keanu knew this was only the beginning for Megan and Nathan. They had survived, but healing would take time. The hospital room was filled with soft beeping from monitors. Megan lay resting, her color returning. Nathan sat beside her, never letting go of her hand. Keanu stood nearby, watching over them. The doctor entered, a reassuring smile on his face. "She's going to be okay. The injury wasn't severe, and with rest, she'll make a full recovery." Nathan let out a shaky breath, relief washing over him. He turned to Keanu, his eyes full of gratitude. "You saved us." Keanu smiled, ruffling Nathan's hair. "You saved yourself, kid. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help." A few days later, Megan was discharged. Though emotionally shaken, she was overwhelmed with gratitude. As she hugged Keanu, tears streamed down her face. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You gave us a second chance." Keanu, ever humble, simply smiled. "I was just in the right place at the right time." Then he turned to Nathan. "But you're the real hero here," Nathan grinned, holding up his toy car, now fixed. Keanu had arranged for it to be repaired, a small symbol that even broken things could be restored. But Keanu wasn't done yet. Inspired by what had happened, he reached out to organizations supporting victims of domestic violence. He offered financial aid, visibility, and used his platform to advocate for those in need. And he made sure Megan and Nathan had the resources to start fresh, free from fear. Months later, Keanu received an invitation to a ceremony. The police department was honoring Nathan for his bravery. On the day of the event, Nathan stood proudly beside Keanu, holding a certificate that read "Young Hero." During the event, Nathan handed Keanu a piece of paper. It was a drawing, two figures, hand in hand, with the words "My Hero" written in colorful letters. Keanu felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at the boy. "You're the real hero, Nathan," Keanu said softly. Asking for help takes more courage than anything else. And as the applause filled the room, Keanu knew that this moment, this life he had helped save, meant more than any movie, any award, or any recognition. There are moments in life that define us not by the things we say, but by the actions we take when no one else is watching. Keanu Reeves didn't plan to be a hero that day. He wasn't searching for recognition or praise. He was simply being what the world needs more of, a human with a heart that listens, a soul that cares, and the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult. At the center of this story is a little boy, Nathan, clutching a broken toy car, a silent plea hidden in his eyes. That toy wasn't just a piece of plastic, it was his world, something to hold on to in the midst of fear. And yet, beyond the broken toy, what Nathan truly needed was hope. He needed someone to see him, to understand that his quiet words carried the weight of a desperate truth. So often, Cries for help are drowned out by the noise of indifference. But that day, someone listened. And because Keanu listened, a life was saved. This story teaches us the immeasurable power of paying attention. How many people walked past Nathan and never saw the fear in his eyes? How often do we ignore the signs around us, assuming that someone else will intervene? The world doesn't change because of grand speeches or empty promises. It changes when people choose to care, to act, and to refuse to look the other way. Keanu didn't just hear Nathan's whisper. He turned it into a roar that could no longer be ignored, and that made all the difference. Courage is another lesson woven deeply into this moment. Not just the courage of a man who stood between a child and his abuser, but the courage of a little boy who, despite his fear, dared to ask for help. It takes unimaginable bravery to speak up when the world tells you to stay silent. Nathan, in his innocence, showed a strength far beyond his years. He reminded us that bravery is not about being unafraid, but about taking a step forward despite the fear. And because he did, his mother Megan was saved. Their story could have ended in tragedy, but instead, it became a testament to the power of courage. And then there is hope, the quiet but relentless force that refuses to be extinguished. Megan's body was bruised, her spirit battered, but she survived. With love and support, healing became possible. Nathan's broken toy car, repaired by Keanu, became a symbol of something greater, that no matter how shattered something seems, it can be made whole again. That includes toys, homes, and most importantly, people. Pain does not have to be permanent. Darkness does not have to last forever. Even after the worst storms, the sun still rises. This story isn't just about one man or one boy, it's about all of us. It's a call to be better, to look beyond ourselves, to recognize that we all have the power to change a life. You don't have to be a celebrity to be a hero. You don't need wealth, strength, or fame. You just need to care enough to act, to listen when someone whispers for help, to step in when others hesitate, to believe that even the smallest kindness can become a lifeline. So ask yourself, what will you do when the moment comes? Will you look away, or will you be the person who listens? Will you stay silent, or will you be the voice that saves someone's life? Because sometimes being in the right place at the right time isn't fate, it's a calling. And the world needs more people willing to answer.